Schopenhauer reveals the real reason you feel drained 24/7. Have you ever stopped in the middle of your day, maybe during a meeting, scrolling through your phone, or lying in bed at night and thought, why am I so tired all the time? Not just physically, but existentially. Like your soul itself is weathered. You've slept enough, you've eaten well, maybe even exercised, but still, there's this invisible weight. A kind of weariness that feels deeper than anything your body alone can explain. And that's where the forgotten genius of Arthur Schopenhauer comes in. Because Schopenhauer didn't just study suffering, he understood it. He saw through the illusion that our fatigue is merely biological or circumstantial. He argued that we are drained because we are caught in a metaphysical trap, and the bait, our own desires. Let's clear something up. Schopenhauer wasn't trying to depress you. He was trying to wake you. He saw something that most people spend their entire lives avoiding, that the human condition is built on a paradox. We are creatures of desire, constantly chasing things we believe will make us whole: success, love, recognition, pleasure. But the moment we get what we want, the satisfaction fades. And what takes its place? A new desire, a new goal, a new sense that something is still missing. This endless cycle, what Schopenhauer called the will to life, isn't just exhausting. It's the reason we feel drained, restless, and somehow never quite at peace. Now think about your day. How many moments are spent in pure contentment? How many minutes pass where you're not wanting something, an outcome, an escape, a distraction? When we wake up, we want coffee. Then we want to check messages. Then we want the traffic to move faster. Then we want the meeting to end. Then we want lunch. Then we want someone to validate us. Then we want to be free of work. Then we want to relax, only to find our minds racing toward the next thing. Schopenhauer would say, of course you're exhausted. You're not living. You're chasing. And every single desire, even the smallest, tugs at your inner equilibrium. Your energy is being siphoned not by work or people or responsibilities, but by your own mind's refusal to rest in the now.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Here's the kicker. Even when you get what you want, the relief is temporary. You get the recognition, and then you fear losing it. You fall in love, and then you worry about it fading. You make money, and then you crave more. Desire never ends, it only mutates. But Schopenhauer was brutally clear on this. Satisfaction is the exception, not the rule. And even when it arrives, it carries the shadow of its own disappearance. That's why joy often feels so fragile. Why happiness feels like something you have to hold on to tightly, afraid it will slip away. Because it will. And that means even pleasure becomes work. Even success becomes stress. Even love becomes a battlefield of insecurity. And so the cycle continues. Want, get, fear, want again. But here's where it gets really interesting and deeply practical. Schopenhauer didn't leave us in despair. He pointed to a way out, not by eliminating desire entirely, which he knew was impossible, but by seeing through it. By understanding that most of what we chase isn't essential, it's conditioned. We've been trained to want, trained to believe that fulfillment lies in achievement, image, stimulation. But what if that's the lie? What if the real reason you feel drained isn't because life is hard, but because you're constantly resisting what is? What if the fatigue is the cost of always being anywhere but here? Let me ask you a question, and I want you to sit with it. What would your life feel like if you stopped needing it to be different than it is, just for a moment? No upgrades, no future goals, no fixing, but just this breath, this moment, this version of you. Can you even imagine that? Or does it feel threatening, like you're giving up? Because that's the trick. We think stillness is surrender. But Schopenhauer would say that stillness is the only real power we have in a world ruled by endless wanting. He would challenge us to step outside the current, to observe the will without obeying it, to say, I see the desire, I feel the pull, but I don't have to follow. That's not detachment, it's mastery. And the more you practice this, the more energy you reclaim. Because every moment you're not chasing something is a moment you're actually alive, not leaning into the future, not escaping into fantasy, just here, awake, present. And over time, that presence becomes a kind of quiet joy, not the loud, ecstatic kind, but the kind that doesn't collapse when the world doesn't go your way, the kind that doesn't drain you, because it doesn't ask for anything. So, if you've been feeling tired, existentially tired, maybe the problem isn't you. Maybe it's the system you're running, the program of perpetual desire. And maybe, just maybe, there's another way to live. The tyranny of the will, how your desires secretly control every part of your life. There's a terrifying realization lurking beneath the surface of modern life. We are not as free as we think we are. We believe we're in control, that we make conscious choices, that our daily decisions reflect some stable version of who we are. But Schopenhauer would laugh quietly, bitterly. Because if you dig deep into his philosophy, you're forced to confront something most people spend their entire lives avoiding. We are slaves to the will. Not will in the sense of determination or discipline, but the will to life, an unconscious, insatiable, blind force that drives all living beings to survive, to reproduce, to strive, and to want endlessly. And the most tragic part, we don't even realize it's running the show. You think you chose that career path. You think you picked your partner, your style, your goals. Schopenhauer would argue that you didn't. The will did. The will, which operates beneath rational thought, beneath moral judgment, beneath even your sense of identity. It's the primal energy that says, more, keep going, don't stop. It doesn't care if you're happy. It doesn't care if you're fulfilled. It only cares that you keep striving, because striving keeps the game going. And so we wake up every day thinking we're chasing meaning, when in reality, we're just obeying the will's command to want. But just look at how we live. We structure our entire lives around anticipation. We endure the present only to reach some imagined future. We tolerate Monday for Friday. We grind through work for the weekend. We save, we hustle, we build, we sacrifice, all for a payoff that never really arrives. Or if it does, it's always smaller than the suffering it cost. And what do we do then? We set a new goal, a bigger dream. Way, bones, Rome, a higher standard. Schopenhauer called this the pendulum swing between pain and boredom. When we don't have what we want, we suffer. But once we get it, we're bored. So the will keeps us swinging, never still, never satisfied. Even our pleasures are infiltrated. But you think you're relaxing, but your mind is already planning the next escape. You're on vacation and thinking about work. You're eating and already craving dessert. You're in love and worrying about losing it. The will hijacks every moment and turns it into a means to an end. And that's the trap. Because as long as you believe that this next thing, the new job, the soulmate, the dream house, the fame, the breakthrough is finally going to bring you home, you are on a leash. And the will is holding it. Here's the most haunting part. The will doesn't care about your individuality. It uses you. You are not the master, you are the instrument. Think of how many people burn out chasing dreams that weren't even truly theirs. Think of how we mimic each other, wanting what others want, measuring success by external standards, living lives that feel hollow but look impressive. The will loves this. It thrives on comparison, on restlessness, on the illusion that fulfillment is just one more achievement away. But the moment you get there, the bar moves, and so you keep running. But what if you stopped? What if, just for a breath, you refused to chase? Not because you're lazy, not because you're giving up, but because you finally saw the pattern. You saw that the will is not your friend, it's a parasite. It consumes your energy, your time, your peace. And it never says thank you. It only demands more. Schopenhauer didn't say we could destroy the will. That would be like trying to kill gravity. But he did say we could see it, and in seeing it, we could weaken its grip. That's the beginning of freedom. When you begin to notice that your desires are not divine truths, but mechanical impulses, that your goals are not sacred, but often inherited from a culture that wants you chasing forever. When you realize that your exhaustion is not a personal failure, but the inevitable result of a system designed to keep you wanting, you begin to wake up. You begin to ask, what would life look like if I didn't obey every craving? What kind of peace might emerge if I stopped treating the present as just a tunnel to some imagined future? This isn't about renouncing the world. It's about reclaiming your life from unconscious compulsion. It's about living from awareness instead of addiction. And maybe, just maybe, it's about learning how to rest not just your body, but your soul. The Great Escape, how art, nature, and stillness reveal the exit from your inner prison once we've seen the will for what it is, this blind, insatiable force that animates our every craving, every ambition, every restless scroll through our phones at 2a.m. The obvious question becomes, is there any way out? If desire is the engine of our suffering, and we're wired to desire, then is peace even possible? Schopenhauer, in all his brutal honesty, didn't offer false hope. He didn't tell us we could conquer the will through sheer willpower. That would be a contradiction. But he did point to something rare, something fragile, something that most people overlook every single day, moments where the will, for just a breath, goes quiet. Moments where we are no longer pulled toward the future or haunted by the past. Moments where we are simply here. And those moments, he said, come through art, nature, and stillness. Let's start with art. Think about the last time you were completely absorbed in a piece of music. Not just listening, but feeling it where time stopped and the melody carried you somewhere beyond yourself. Or when you stood in front of a painting that silenced your inner chatter, not because you understood it, but because it spoke directly to a part of you that had no words. Schopenhauer believed that this kind of aesthetic experience suspends the will. But when we are truly immersed in beauty, not consuming it, not analyzing it, but merging with it, we are lifted out of the endless cycle of desire. We are no longer subjects chasing objects. We become pure perception. And in that state, there is no craving, no lack, no identity, just being. Now apply that to nature. Have you ever stood at the edge of the ocean and felt, for just a moment, like your personal drama didn't matter? Or walked through a forest and sensed something ancient inside you exhale? Nature doesn't want anything from you. It doesn't ask you to prove yourself, to perform, to strive. It just is. And when you're in it, fully present, you begin to remember that you, too, are part of something larger. Something that doesn't need to be chased or fixed or improved. That's why so many people feel a strange kind of peace in the wilderness. It's not because their problems disappear. It's because, for a moment, they're not trying to solve anything. They're not trying to become anyone. They're just watching, listening, existing. And then there's stillness, the most challenging and most powerful of all. Stillness isn't just the absence of noise. It's the absence of striving. It's the radical act of doing nothing, not because you're lazy, but because you're finally willing to meet yourself without distraction. Most people are terrified of stillness because it exposes everything they've been running from. The anxiety, the emptiness, the buried grief. But Schopenhauer would argue that only in stillness can we face the world directly, not to fight it, but to observe it, to see it rise, to feel the pull, and to let it pass like a wave. This is where freedom begins, not in resisting or repressing the will, but in witnessing it without attachment. That's the great escape. Not a dramatic rebellion, not a grand epiphany, but a gentle return. A return to what's already here beneath the noise. We don't need to destroy the will, we need to stop mistaking it for our true self. Because there is something in you right now that is deeper than desire, deeper than fear, deeper than whatever story your mind is telling you about what needs to happen next. That something is awareness. It's the part of you that sees without needing to change, that feels without needing to fix, that exists without needing to achieve. And it's always been there. You've just been too busy chasing to notice. So here's a question to sit with. When was the last time you were truly still, not physically, but mentally? Not planning, not worrying, not wanting, just aware, just alive. If you can't remember, that's not your fault. It's the world we live in, but it's also your opportunity. Because the more you practice presence through art, through nature, through silence, the more you begin to loosen the grip of the will. And in those gaps, however small, something extraordinary begins to emerge. Not happiness in the conventional sense, something quieter, something real. The final realization, why accepting suffering may be the only way to transcend it at the end of this journey. After all the questions, the introspection, the peeling back of illusions, Schopenhauer delivers one final, unsettling truth. Suffering is not a bug in the system, it is the system. The will to life, this force that animates all desire, is also the root of all pain. And the more we fight it, the tighter its grip becomes. The more we try to escape suffering through distraction, ambition, pleasure, even spiritual seeking, the more we reinforce its power. So what's the answer? Schopenhauer's final twist is as counterintuitive as it is profound. The way out is through acceptance. But this is not the kind of passive acceptance people usually mistake for weakness. It's not saying, this is just how life is, and I give up. It's saying, I see the structure, I see the game, and I no longer need to play it unconsciously. It's the kind of acceptance that comes with clarity, with detachment, with a deep, wordless realization that you are not the cravings that move through you. You are not the endless hunger for more. You are not the pain that has defined your story. You are the awareness that sees all of it and does not cling. Schopenhauer, despite his reputation for pessimism, wasn't trying to depress us. He was offering a kind of liberation not by removing suffering, but by removing our identification with it. When you stop taking your suffering personally, it loses its sting. When you stop believing that every painful experience has to mean something about your worth or your fate or your future, it passes through you like weather. You don't have to suppress it. You don't have to dramatize it. You just let it be. And strangely, paradoxically, it begins to loosen its hold. This is why Schopenhauer admired ascetics and mystics, not because they denied life, but because they saw through it. They understood that freedom doesn't come from having everything you want. It comes from no longer needing everything you want. And when you reach that point, not all at once, but in small, repeated moments, you begin to experience a subtler, more enduring peace. Not the high of achievement, not the thrill of pleasure, but a quiet joy. A joy that doesn't depend on conditions, a joy that simply is. So here's the real challenge. Can you live in a world built on desire without being ruled by it? Can you allow suffering to exist without letting it define you? Can you feel the pull of the will and still choose stillness? These are not questions with easy answers. They are Cohn's riddles that work on you from the inside out. But Schopenhauer believed that just seeing the truth is already a kind of awakening. You don't have to fix everything. You don't have to become someone else. You just have to see. And in that seeing, something shifts. Something lets go. And you finally begin to rest.